Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, welcome to the Funk Chronicles. I'm your host, Dr. Turk Logan from Logan Communication and the Funk Museum Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center. And with me today, I have a young man all the way from Denver, Colorado, Mr. Skip Reeves. How you doing, Skip?
I'm doing good, Turk. How are you?
I'm better than fine. I'm fantastic, man. Thank you for joining us here on the Funk Chronicles from Denver. What does Skip do? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, you know what, Turk? I actually started off as a drummer. I was a professional drummer for about 35 years. So I had the opportunity to play with some national level artists and a ton of independent artists and local artists. But after my drumming career, I kind of segued over into radio. And how that came about, when I was on the road performing professionally, and when I would be on the bus or whatever mode of transportation, especially listening to the radio, I started getting a little bored with radio because no matter what city or town we went to, or even state, you know, the radio, it sounded the same. The stations, if it was an R&B format or classic rock format or whatever, they just all had the same sound. And I used to say to myself, man, if I ever can do a radio show, I'm really gonna mix it up. I'm gonna play the cuts that are 3 and 4 songs deep into a release. The hits are great, but there's more to, you know, particular groups than just the hits. So I started coming up with this concept for a radio show about the year 1996. So if I can move forward, here in Denver, you got to keep in mind, for a period of time, R&B radio was virtually non-existent here in the Denver metro area.
Okay.
We had a particular R&B radio station that went off the air for whatever reason. And we had a couple of other stations that would, you know, insert a couple R&B songs every now and then, adult contemporary radio. But for the most part, it was dead here. So what happened was, since I'd already had this concept and this format for a radio show, I ended up going to 2 radio stations here in town that I knew the people on a limited basis and said, hey, I got a great concept for a radio show. Would you let me do it on your, you know, on your network? They basically told me, Turk, that the show wouldn't work. They said there's no audience for what you want to do, and it wouldn't have any success. Well, of course, I knew better than that, both in my heart and just from my conversations with talking with people. So about the year 2005, early 2005, I went to a public radio station here in town it's actually a jazz station, but on the weekends, they did specialty shows, and there was diverse programming on the weekends.
Okay.
So I approached the music director first and said, hey, listen, I got a great concept for a show. Would you have a meeting with me and let me explain it to you? Well, because they had known me as a drummer and they were aware of my reputation in town, they said, sure, Skip, come on down and talk to us. So I talked to the music director, laid the concept before him. He said, oh my goodness, great idea. He said, but we got to talk to the program director. So we did that. He said, oh my goodness, great idea. Then we went to the general manager. So all 3 authoritative figures that I needed to get the approval from, I got. So in 2006, the first Saturday in 2006, I started my radio show. It's called A Funk Above the Rest. And the concept for the show was to have funk as its foundation, but I was going to cover the full gamut of R&B music, but I was also going to include the deeper cuts into a particular release. And I was also going to support local and independent artists within that format. So major, local, independent, major, local, independent. That's how I shaped the show. And within 3 months, they told me that, you know, the phone was blowing off the hook. So that's how the show got started. I've been doing it now for 9 years. The show is now syndicated both on digital and terrestrial stations. I've got 7 stations as of right now that carry the show outside of America. So what's funny about it is that for 2 people at these other radio stations that told me the show would never work, to now I'm on 40 radio stations with a total combined audience of over 1.5 million people. So here we are.
Well, you had an idea, and the idea worked, and congratulations. Let me um, back up a little bit because you said you played with some national groups. Who were some of the groups you played with?
I played with old school groups such as I played with the Drifters, I played with the Platters, I played with the Marvelettes from Motown, I've played with the Coasters, and then a couple on the rock side. I played with Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wills. Uh, I played with Little Stevie, who was a member of Bruce Spring, Bruce Springsteen's band.
Springsteen, right,
And then I also played with Buddy Miles, who was the former drummer for Jimi Hendrix
right.
for many years. So those are some
You,
of the national level people I was associated with.
you as a drummer, David Webb, our president of the Funk Museum Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center, is a drummer, and I'm sure he'll attest to this. But you as a drummer, you play differently, and you correct me if I'm wrong, with the Platters. The rhythm would be different with the Platters than it would be with Buddy Miles, wouldn't
Yeah, for sure. But Turk, but that's what I enjoyed about it all because of the diversity. I mean, I'm kind of a diverse person because of my upbringing. So yeah, I didn't have to play as aggressive. I didn't have to play as hard or as funky when I was with the Platters. But when I played with the Drifters, they wanted the power. They wanted that snapping backbeat.
it?
So
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I gave each group what they wanted, but they still let me bring me to the songs.
Well, I noticed that you said something that I did that helped make the group successful back in the 70s. And you said you played more than one cut on your radio show from an album. And that's very special because, when you have what we call in the business ears, you're not only going to hear the key song, which might be the title to the album, but there are other songs on that album that are arable, that have the same quality as the key song, correct?
Yes, for sure, for sure. And Turk, as a young kid growing up, and of course, like many of us, much music was in my household, but I was always looking for the songs and the artists that everybody else didn't know or
Exactly.
didn't hear about. I was always doing it. My father had kind of raised me like not to be a follower. He's like, Skip, just step out and forge your own path. And so as a young man, when my father taught me that, in so many directions of my life, that was my approach. So when I went to the record store, yes, I bought the hits, but I also was looking through the bin, but who do we not know here? And I would buy those records and bring them home and go, oh man, that's a great track there.
How did you and David finally get together? I know you guys are both drummers, and I know you've got a story about that. How do you and David Webb kind of hook up?
Well, both of us being funk advocates and, promoters and proliferators of this whole funk environment, just through a networking of sources, we just came together. There's some people here in Denver that are involved with the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center, the networking and the connections, and we finally just hooked up. And once we recognized that we both, had the same interest in promoting and keeping funk alive, it was just a natural fit. So when I came across David and realized that for 10 plus years or so that he was working on trying to get this Funk Museum Hall of Fame out, I had thought about that idea many years ago myself. I said, it's long overdue. Because,
Sure.
Turk, I have to express this. Funk music is an American art form, and it has spread out all over the world, and I have the proof of that because of the international presence of my radio show. And this is no exaggeration. I get 300 to 400 songs for airplay consideration every single week. And the great majority of that music is coming from outside of America. And it's all of these people from Poland, from Russia, from Australia, from Argentina, that they're all doing their version of funk music. So I'm thinking, man,
We got
a,
something here. Yeah.
a museum, it's a funk museum, it is long overdue.
And,
So David and I were among others, because he's got quite a few funk ambassadors, but all of us collectively, and as many more we can get to join the cause, it needs to be done.
Well, that's the beauty of the internet, because I also own an internet radio station, and not taking anything away from an AM station or an FM station, but internet, you can reach your audience in Jamaica, you can reach your audience in Brazil, you can reach your audience all over the world, and you know what you're telling me is going on with me as well, because I get a lot of music on a regular basis through the internet for my radio station. So we're on the same page, and hey man, just keep doing what you're doing, and we're just glad to have you aboard with us. Give us your assessment of the educational piece and how important the musical educational piece in the Funk Museum is.
Well, it's extremely important because funk music and funk artists have been, major influences for other artists from various genres. I mean, I've talked to people, country artists. I've talked to rock artists. I've talked to Latin artists. I've talked to artists. I was talking to a guy the other day who's a flamenco guitar player. All of them have mentioned some funk artists in the past that they're familiar with and had an effect, whether minor or major. So from an educational standpoint, people need to know that. I mean, how can you have something that's had such a major influence, but yet it's, kind of minimized as far as its importance in both education and its influence on the musical world scene? It's not fair. So we got to do something about that.
Well, let me ask a question. Is the city of Denver like the city of Dayton school system, where there's no basic music? Now, Dayton has a School of the Arts, and I'm sure there's music in that particular school, but when the rest of the schools, and there's many other schools in grade schools and high schools in Dayton, Ohio, that do not have music in their curriculum. Is Denver like that as well?
In certain school systems it is, and in certain ones it is not. For example, of course, on the college level, I just had a meeting, a few days ago with a woman at a college here. It's called CU Denver, and they have a very strong music program there. But once again, unfortunately, funk music and even a lot of R&B as a whole is just not featured as much.
Okay.
So I would say that there is some of it in certain areas, in certain school systems, but in some school systems, it's not.
And overall, probably funk is not involved in the curriculum, because I'm sure it's not involved here in Dayton, Ohio, even though we have been recognized as the funk capital of the world. But again, it's like starting something all over again, because what I've been doing since 1971, so I'm going into 44 years, and now it's starting to be recognized here in Dayton, Ohio, and it's crossing over into the general market, but it's still not per se into the school system for obvious reasons, because if the kids had their druthers, they would be listening to rap music. And so consequently, we have to educate them to what a major part of the music history is, and that's funk.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it.
Tell me about your radio show and your format and things of this nature.
Well, my home base radio station is a digital station called KZKO. You can check them out at kzkoradio.com. The owner of the station has been just generous in giving me 100% control over what I say, over what I play and what I do. Even though it's a digital station, it operates full scale like a commercial station. I mean, they sell advertisement, they've got other shows, they've got other DJs, they're very involved in the community. So it's a very successful digital station. I also do my particular show, A Funk Above the Rest, on a terrestrial station here in the area between Denver and Boulder. It's KGNU 88.5 FM, and they also have a signal on the AM dial 1390. I do my show one Wednesday a month on that station, but every Saturday night I'm at kzkoradio.com from 9 to 11 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I choose to make the digital station my primary home base because, as you mentioned earlier, Turk, we're actually reaching more people, by means of the internet and the digital network that's out there. So the concept and format is that like I said, the foundation is funk music, but I play the full range of R&B. So, I've got some soul in there, a little bit of blues creeps in every now and then. Turk, I have a tagline every Saturday night when I open my show. My tagline says, "This is where you hear the old funk, the new funk, and the everything in between funk. This
I
is where you hear
like
the
that.
grooves you haven't heard in a while. Yeah, you have the grooves you haven't heard in a while and tunes you have never heard." So because I constantly put that tagline out, if I do decide to go off the beaten path just for a moment, my listeners accept it because I've already conditioned him to realize we may go in between the funk every now and then. Let me give you an example, Turk. This is a couple of years ago. I played an acoustic song from a young white girl that had nothing to do with funk, had nothing to do with R&B. But the song's lyrics and his presentation was so powerful. Before I played the song, I said, "Everybody, listen, we're getting ready to go in between the funk now. I'm getting ready to drop an acoustic song on you, but listen to the lyrics. You're going to enjoy what this woman says in this song, and check it out." And I played the song. Well, after the song went off, my phone blew up. "Man, that was a great song. Who was that? Where can I get it?" And blah, blah, blah. So I've set my whole format up that if I want to veer off just for a moment, because I got a specific song that I want to play that's maybe saying something, that's got a good message or a good vibe, I'll put it in there. And my audience accepts it with no problem.
Well, it's amazing that you would say that because last year I worked with a legendary art person. His name is Bing Davis. He does art, not from a music standpoint, but he does art. And but he did a music project in Dayton, Ohio at the Schuster Center. And what he did was he brought some kids in and he called me to tie me into his art project with the music. And I went out to a high school in Dayton, Ohio called Fairmont. Now, Fairmont is basically an all-white school. And I walked into the room and they had a radio station and there were 15 kids sitting there and had the opportunity to talk to these youngsters for 3 straight hours. 15 of them, all white, teenagers, and they were the most beautiful youngsters that I had ever had the opportunity to run my mouth to and talk about my music business and my career in broadcasting for 3 hours. They were attentive, they asked questions, they didn't fall asleep, and then they recorded that whole project, and they took that project and made it a project for them to get graded on. And then there was a play at the place called the Schuster Center in downtown Dayton that tied into the early part of the music business coming out of Memphis, and the kids were there. And it was such a beautiful thing because a lot of our kids, I worked at a university for many years, 2 universities for many years, and if the kids had their druthers, they would listen to rap music. Well, I don't have a problem with that because I understand that it's a cultural thing for the kids. The problem I had with the rap music is some of the music had very negative lyric content, and I wouldn't touch it. And so,
Right.
but when we got into the funk and we got into black music and R&B, the kids were lost. They had no clue as to what's going on, and then these youngsters in high school did a whole project on it.
Right. So there you have it. Just more evidence why we need to keep pushing and
Why
promoting,
the,
huh?
why the educational piece is so important because as in your city, what's the population of Denver, Colorado?
Well, the metro area, man, is probably more than 1.5 million.
Okay. What's the
hmm
breakdown? Do you know what the breakdown of black people are in that city?
Yeah, from what I hear, it's around maybe 4 to 6%. It's pretty small in comparison
Right.
to
To the
the
metro, yeah.
major population. Yeah, and then the Latino market maybe makes up about 33%.
Okay, okay, so it's a bigger Latino market out there
Oh,
than it is a
it's
bigger
it's
black market. Okay, well, because I've never been to Denver, but I hear great things about it, and I know it's a beautiful city, and I know you are doing some great things in Denver, Colorado. So keep doing what you're doing, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking to Mr. Skip Reeves here on the Funk Chronicles from Denver, Colorado, and Skip is a radio personality out in Denver, and he's also a musician, And tell us again about why you made that transition from being an artist to playing artist.
Well, I had been playing drums for so long, and due to some personal things that took place in my life, I was just ready to get away from it. I had done it so long. You know how they got that expression, been there and done that. I had conquered that. I was ready now for another challenge, for just, another avenue to uh, challenge myself. So
Right.
the radio ended up being just a normal fit, but it almost happened accidentally because very quickly, Turk, I actually did a TV radio show, a local TV radio show for a short period of time that was for children. It was a literacy program because I'm a big, advocate of reading. But from the television show, we did that for 5 years, and then when me and my partner decided to phase out of that, some people asked me, why don't you bring that same program to Radio Disney? We thought, oh, okay. So I actually went to Radio Disney, and I was there for close to a year before Radio Disney decided to close out their Denver operations. But I got a feel for radio because of being at Radio Disney. And I thought, man, I've always had this idea for this music show. If I can find a station to let me do it. So that's kind of how the transition took place from being a musician into radio. And I'm still here and I'm loving it. But I've also now too, Turk, transferred over into, or I should say, segued into being a concert promoter now. So I've got my own media company, and we're doing big concerts now. We've had Frankie Beverly in town, and Cameo, and Lakeside, and Slade. Matter of fact, Slade was the first group I ever brought to Denver.
Okay.
And so now I'm doing concert promotions. I'm involved with the Soul Food Festival now, and I just confirmed the deal. We're getting ready to bring Midnight Star to Denver here in July. So all of this has been transitioning from being a drummer to where I'm at today.
And one of the good news for you is you've got the ears. Being a musician, you understand the music, and then when you get the different types of music that come to you to play on your radio station, you can tell if the music is good or not because you've got the ears to do that. You're also a funk ambassador for the museum. Tell us about your role in that.
Well, I'm just going to, contribute to trying to keep it promoted as well. Through my network, on my websites, I've got the logo for people to get onto the website to help raise donations, get involved with fundraising projects, and just bring awareness to the project as a whole. So basically, Turk, with the media network that I have and any other way that I can contribute and support, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, Dayton, Ohio has been acknowledged as the home of the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright. They had a bicycle shop over 100 years ago in West Dayton, Ohio, and evolved into the first biplane that they wanted to fly here that didn't work out, so they went to Kitty Hawk. But Dayton is known as the birthplace of aviation. And what we're trying to do here in Dayton, Ohio is similar to what you're doing in Denver, but we want to say we are the birthplace of the Funk Museum in the country. Have you ever been to Dayton, Ohio?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I was there last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your take on us doing this here and getting the credit for being the Funk Museum here in Dayton, Ohio?
Well, first of all, I applaud you and, of course, David Webb and the rest of his staff and the ambassadors and the board of directors. I applaud all of you for, initiating this process and getting it started because, like we said, it's long overdue. I do believe in my heart you're going to have success and you will achieve, the goals that you're trying to produce with the Funk Music Hall of Fame Exhibition Center. And it's deserving that it come right there from where you guys are at. I mean, how many funk bands came out of one little area?
One little city, exactly. One little area, West Dayton, Ohio, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another city that can make that claim that so many effective, successful, hit-making groups came out of one area. It's rightly so that it comes right out of Dayton, Ohio.
Well, I have to agree with you, being a major part of a player in that, and having a direct link to many of the groups that came back out of Dayton, Ohio. 15 major groups from West Dayton, Ohio. 15 major successful groups that you mentioned, Slave, Lakeside, Roger, Zapp, all the guys that came out of Ohio Players, Fazo, and so on. So we just interviewed Sean Sandridge with the group Dayton, and Sean and I have a history together. And it's beautiful to me after 44 years of seeing it come, like you planted that seed many years ago, and that seed is starting to grow into a willow tree, something that's going to be around for 100 years. So, you know, and I'm just glad that you're involved in Denver, because Denver is a major city, a major market, and I'm glad that you are a funk ambassador. And in closing, Skip, give us something that to leave us with as far as what it is you're doing, what your vision is, and things of that nature.
Well, Turk, you know, a big issue that I have is that mainstream radio and mainstream TV and mainstream media, whatever, you know, they've taken the funk element out. I mean, you know, we used to have Soul Train years ago. You know, even American Bandstand would, you know, from time to time put, you know, R&B and funk music on there. But there are no major mediums anymore that are featuring this American art form that we know as funk. So again, my goal in association with, you know, David, the Funk Museum, and everybody connected to this funk element, this funk arena, my goal is just for it to get where it belongs, get the recognition it deserves, get the respect that it deserves, and basically everybody who's connected to it, especially the artists, for what's left of them. Because David, Turk, before long, you know, the artists that created this stuff, we're losing them. We're losing them. We're losing them. Right. So we need to keep that arena alive and well out there, because it had a major influence on the world, major influence.
Skip, would you join us again at a later date to kind of keep us apprised on what you're doing out there in Denver, Colorado?
I sure will. Would love to do so.
We've been talking with Mr. Skip Reeves from Denver, Colorado, radio personality, well known here on the Funk Chronicles. I'm your host, Dr. Turk Logan from Logan Communications and the Funk Museum Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We'll see you next time.